And I'm joined by some very powerful organizations and colleagues who recognize the importance of dealing with the issue of sexual assault on college campuses. It is unacceptable that 20% of young women and 6% of young men are victims of sexual assault or the attempt of sexual assault during their college years. It's unacceptable that an estimated 63% of universities shirk their responsibilities and duties to respond to violent crimes, according to the National Institute of Justice. You know, this is not new news. This has been going on college campuses for decades, and no one paid attention until young college co-eds started walking around campuses with mattresses, and young men and women who were strong and united spoke up against sexual assault on college campuses. We have had the Title IX in the Higher Education Act for 40 years. It prohibits sex discrimination in education. It is not just about women and sports. The Department of Education currently has 123 sexual violence cases under investigation at 113 universities. The epidemic does not know class, race, or U.S. News and World Report ratings of colleges. 3 of the top 5 universities, Harvard, Columbia, and Stanford, are all currently under investigation for Title IX violations. Rape is a crime, period. We need laws, enforcement, and a culture that treats it that way. That's why I'm proud to be joined with all of those who are with me here to introduce a bipartisan Hold Accountable and Lend Transparency, or HALT, Campus Sexual Violence Act. This bill will establish standards and penalties to hold schools accountable under Title IX and the Clary Act, and guarantee survivors the rights they deserve. I want to thank all of you who have come here. I want to thank my friends and colleagues in Congress who support this, all 26, and Fred Lawrence is here from Michigan, who will be speaking shortly, and my bipartisan colleague, Congressman Pat Meehan of Pennsylvania, for joining us here to introduce this bipartisan bill. I'd like to also thank others who are standing in solidarity and being available for questions. Laura Kaufman with the National Women's Law Center, Ann Hedgepeth with the American Association of University Women, Krista Nemzik with the California Partnership to End Domestic Violence, Debbie Bryant with the National Alliance to End Sexual Violence. We are standing here today united against campus sexual assault because of the efforts of students. These students, many of whom are also sexual assault survivors, have organized and fought, sometimes for years, so that our nation would finally take a hard look at the college campus culture. We are here thanks to the bravery of students who have the courage to come forward and tell their stories. I met with a group of college co-eds at a UC over a year ago. Some of these young women were courageous enough to stand up and tell their stories, filed complaints, and then were never even interviewed by the university. They were never ever told what the deposition was or what the disposition was of the case. These young women and supportive men prompted California's legislature to audit the University of California and the California State University system for compliance with Title IX. Students also helped make California the first in the nation to pass yes means yes legislation that requires an affirmative, unambiguous, and conscious decision by each party to engage in sexual activity. And it was students that pushed the Department of Education's Office of Civil Rights to become more transparent in their investigations. We're also here today because we have so much work yet to do. I'm proud to say that the bipartisan HALT Act is the approach that garners the most support from advocacy groups across the country. I'm also want to take a moment to talk about briefly what the bill does. The bill creates greater transparency. It requires the Office of Civil Rights to disclose investigations that are ongoing. It requires that they have the authority now to increase the fines under the Clery Act, and it creates for the first time in the Office of Civil Rights the opportunity to assess fines on universities that are short of actually closing down all federal funds to the institution. It also provides that all of the students at college campuses be aware by public notice in public places of what their rights are under the law and where they can go to seek help. It also provides a private right of action. All of these are improvements to Title IX, and I think go a long way to addressing many of the concerns that still exist. I'd now like to have my colleague and good friend, Congressman Pat Meehan from Pennsylvania, say a few words, or as many words as he would like, on the issue.
Well, let me thank my good friend Congresswoman Spear, who I have enjoyed the great fortune to have worked together on a number of issues, and I think we are proud to be part of a group of colleagues here. Say we are now joined by Representative Costa, who have joined together in response to the concerns and cries, and to listen to the voices of the victims, particularly those who are struggling with experiences they've had on college campuses. This is an important piece of legislation that continues the bipartisan work that we have done to try to make sure that we accomplish a series of things. The first is accountability. Accountability to assure that there is response, an appropriate and timely response to those who have been victimized, and bring that to the school's attention. The next is transparency. And as the Congresswoman said, one of the real concerns has been, as the process unfolds, often the victim is left not understanding how the resolution has been completely resolved, and others outside do not know as much about about not only the agreements, but other kinds of terms that have been reached as a result. And these things, where appropriate, need to be more publicly available. So accountability, in addition to the ability for us to have transparency. And I also think that there's a third aspect, and it's an important piece of why I'm so pleased that Congresswoman Spear has continued to push so effectively for us in this area. And it's the question of feedback. I think so much of this has come from the ground up, and appropriately so. My eyes were open as a prosecutor when I saw for the first time the continuing anguish of a young woman who had been victimized by a rape on her college campus that went completely unaddressed. That victim was the one who had to leave the college, and only later was her testimony used in a subsequent prosecution, a second rape by this assailant, as part of a pattern activity, and she was able to finally get some kind of resolution. But I learned so much about the other troubling aspects of her experience, and it has led to the continuing partnership with Congresswoman Spear on what we have learned from these victims. One of the issues that we put together, as I know the Congresswoman has, groups in our area made of very much the same advocates that are here today. I'm so grateful for these advocates for the work that they put in. So we're listening to them about the things that they think are necessary in order for us to be more responsive on behalf of the victims. And one of the things that we have in here is the opportunity for us to take these kinds of programs and do biennial surveys in which we will have the campuses allow the victims, the entire campus, to be responsive anonymously, to let us know what is working with the policies, what is not, and to give feedback so that we can continue to job. So I am grateful to be part of this. Again, I want to emphasize once again, the importance of being able to work in a bipartisan fashion. We have had success moving this from the SAVE Act and otherwise, but there continues to be a great deal more to do, and I'm very pleased to be part of it, and I'm very grateful to my friend and colleague, Congresswoman Spear, for her leadership in making this happen. Thanks.
I'd like, excuse me, I'd like to ask one of our new members, Brenda Lawrence from the state of Michigan, to say as many words as she would like.
I want to say good afternoon to everyone. I want to thank my colleagues, and directly Congresswoman Spear and Congressman Meehan for calling this press conference to introduce the Hold Accountability and Lead Transparency Campus Sexual Violence Act. I want to thank the many community leaders who are here, legal members and university survivors support groups who are here today as we work on this bipartisan bill. Most importantly, I want to take the time now to honor the survivors, those who have been victims of campus sexual violence, and showing your incredible courage and stepping up so that we are empowered to fight for you. So for those, some who are silent, some of those who are standing in the shadows, I want you to know that today is a sign of support for you and for women all over this country. Every lawmaker in this nation should be inspired by the bravery of the women and the selflessness that they show when they step forward. You know, this is the time of the year where I'm invited to numerous graduations, and I go there with the pride of the family, the community, and individuals saying that we have been successful, we've educated this young person, and now we're sending them to higher universities, higher education, and that we have such high expectations for them. At no time when I'm at these gatherings do we even contemplate that dream could be derailed, or that amazing blank canvas of a human being in America will be tarnished by sexual violence. It is so important that we, in a nonpartisan way, support, and I call for all my colleagues to support and be very active and vocal as we are today about standing up for our young people. And this cannot continue. We have an expectation when we send our children to college that there will be a basic standard of care, protection against any form of violence, including sexual violence. We also have an expectation. I, as a mother, as a grandmother, as a political leader and community leader, I have an expectation that if my children are harmed in any way, and at a university, that they will receive immediate care and attention, and that the violence against them will not be tolerated, and that it will be addressed, disclosed, and prosecuted. I stand here today with my colleagues saying that there is much for us to do, but to emphasize how important this bill is, and that for every woman, for every young person in college, because this is not limited to women alone, that we stand with our young people as we send them to college, and we continue to support them through these organizations. We do our work here in Congress, and so that we can continue to build an educated workforce that is critical for the success of America. This is tied to our economy. This is tied to our success as the United States of America, and I'm proud to stand here with my colleagues to support this bill.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Now, my colleague from California, who I had the great privilege of serving with in the state legislature for many years, Congressman Jim Costa, Fresno.
Thank you very much, Congresswoman Spear. It's indeed my honor and pleasure to be a part of this bipartisan effort. Congressman Pat Mann, thank you for your efforts and your insight from your previous experience, as you indicated in your statement as a prosecutor. Congressman Jackie Spear has always demonstrated leadership from the years that I've worked with her in the California Assembly and the State Senate, and always attempting to do the right thing. And that's what we're trying to do here today. This effort, their leadership and my other colleagues in getting the HOLT accountability and LIN transparency legislation through is very, very important. Its purpose, obviously, is to halt campus sexual violence, which sadly is all too prevalent in our society today. And, news stories in recent years, I think, substantiate that. More needs to be done, simply stated. As a co-chair of the Victims' Rights Caucus with Congressman Ted Poe and my colleagues here, we are always focusing on the impacts of victims of crime. And that's what these women are. They're victims of crime. And so therefore, this dovetails with other efforts that we advocate and fight for, whether it's the Violence Against Women's Act, or whether it's legislation protecting the VOCA funding that provides funding for a host of these purposes. We all have a role to play as we work toward a future that allows our campuses to be free from sexual assault and violence. And that's why this legislation is so important. Colleges and universities are taking their own initiatives. And this can be very helpful in supporting those initiatives and reducing the prevalence of sexual assault in our society. But obviously, this legislation can play a vital role in assisting their efforts in reducing such sexual violence in campuses across the country. I know in the University of California at Merced, the newest campus, newest research campus actually in the United States, and the newest campus in California, 10 years old. 6,000 plus students, the first majority campus in the state, and over 60% of the students are the first persons in their family to attend a university. And yet this university, as new as it is, took upon itself to establish a 24/7 hotline on sexual violence, which is a really a shout out to those students who understand the problem in their new university. This bipartisan legislation, I believe, will help ensure that we help campuses like the University of California at Merced and other campuses throughout the country in taking these crimes and helping them to address and reduce and hopefully eliminate them. That's the most important thing that we can do. Again, I want to thank the leadership of Congresswoman Jackie Spear, Congressmember Pat Meehan, and everyone who's here today, the various organizations who we work with, because without your help, obviously, this just doesn't get done. So we look forward to continuing to work on a bipartisan effort to move this legislation, and I'm glad to be a small part of this effort. Thank you so much.
So I want each of our advocacy groups to have 1 minute to say a few words about their support for the legislation. So why don't we just go in order?
Go down the line, is that okay? I'm Ann Hitchcock, I'm the Government Relations Manager at the American Association of University Women. We're thrilled to have Representative Spear and Meehan introduce this legislation today to continue to help tackle the problem of campus sexual violence. Smart schools know that a best practice is to assess their climates. You don't know what you don't know, and asking students what's going on campus can make a big difference when it comes to strategizing about ending sexual violence. This legislation helps take that best practice to a universal practice, something that every school will have to do. And we think that's really a game changer when it comes to ending sexual violence on campus. I can't say enough about having a bipartisan effort here in the House to help move forward a priority like ending campus sexual violence. And AUW is pleased to be here today to support the legislation.
Hi, I'm Lara Kaufman. I am Senior Counsel and Director of Education Policy for At-Risk Students at the National Women's Law Center. This is a civil rights issue, and under the law, schools have an obligation to make sure that students who experience sexual violence can continue their education free from sex discrimination without having to suffer through a hostile environment. Unfortunately, schools are still not adequately responding to these instances, and it is definitely a national problem. And so we applaud the bipartisan effort here in the House to address this issue in such a comprehensive way. And I just want to point out a few of the important steps that this bill takes that we think are so important. One is, as Anne mentioned, requiring schools to conduct biennial campus climate surveys. Another example would be increasing funding for the Department of Education so that they have more investigators on hand who can handle these cases. There's been a spike in complaints, and unfortunately they are short-staffed, and so increasing resources in that area will really help to resolve these complaints in a timely manner before students feel like they have to drop out of school in order to escape what's happening to them. Another wonderful addition is creating an interagency task force so that there's better coordination and enhanced enforcement, and also the increased transparency so that more students are aware of their rights, more schools are aware of their obligations, and everyone can be aware of the enforcement efforts that are underway that are so instructive. We really, again, appreciate the opportunity to work together with members of Congress on this bill, and look forward to continuing that work.
Hello, I'm Deborah Bryant, and I'm here representing the National Alliance to End Sexual Violence. Along with our national organization, CalCASA has worked very closely with Congresswoman Spears in the past, and particularly on this bill, and we are very supportive of her efforts and the work of the Congressman from Pennsylvania, who's worked very closely with PCAR. So thank you very much for your leadership over the years. You know, survivors don't often know their legal remedies. They don't often know their resources that are available. Climate surveys that are going to help, that will be universal through the work in this bill, will not only help the institutions know what they need to do, it will certainly help the survivors understand the resources that are available. Partnerships with state sexual assault coalitions and local rape crisis centers are absolutely critical to providing campuses with the resources that they need, both for training and technical assistance, and particularly work with evidence-based and evidence-informed strategies to prevent sexual violence. We again look forward, along with my colleagues, look forward to working with members of Congress to support this legislation. Thank you.
Good afternoon, I'm Kristen Imzik. I'm with the California Partnership to End Domestic Violence. And at the partnership, we recognize that sexual assault and rape and sexual violence and dating violence are intersecting issues, and that these are our communities. So we are pleased to work closely with the California Coalition Against Sexual Assault on their wonderful efforts at the state level, and with our California delegation and members of Congress and the national sexual assault organizations to help lift up this effort and others to keep our college campuses safe for all of our young women and children. Thank you.
All right, questions? Yes, Nick?
Congressman Ian,
All right.
I wonder if you could address how this bill would move forward in the House, what level of Republican support it has, and talk a little bit about the bipartisanship here and why this is a bipartisan issue.
Well, it's a bipartisan issue first and foremost because members of Congress, whether they're Republicans or Democrats, frequently are fathers and mothers, where they talk very closely with their friends who have children themselves in school. So it is something that has touched homes across the nation. This is not an issue which has been one of silence any longer. There's an increasing awareness and a growing concern of the scope of sexual violence that is taking part not just in our society, but particularly in merits, that this is the kind of a thing that we can move forward. You've seen we've made advances, the SAVE Act and other kinds of legislation that we've been able to work collaboratively on, whether we've been an instrumental part of it, driving it, or part of the, just one more voice in the legislation. These have collectively grown in their awareness in past Congresses, and I think we will continue to get that kind of support. And we'll do our best to see what we could do to work here in the House and with our colleagues on the other side of the aisle to get legislation that can get to the President's desk.
Yes?
Can you tell me how many Democratic sponsors you co-sponsors you have and how many Republican co-sponsors you have with them?
I think we have 26 co-sponsors, and right now we only have one Republican, but we're gonna build on that, because Pat's gonna work really hard. Anything else? All right, well, thank you all for being so patient and waiting for us. We really appreciate it. Thanks. All right, buddy.